Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 11 of What If I Was Reborn in Attack on Titan as a civilian nobody with the gamer system. Let the tale begin. Chapter 201. Time passed quietly. Before anyone realized it, more than 10 days had gone by. At the gates of Walsena, Locke and Levi rode side by side as the returning convoy entered the capital. Citizens lined both sides of the avenue, gazes following the Survey Corps with a mixture of awe and gratitude. After surviving wave after wave of Titan incursions, the people's reverence for the Corps had surpassed anything seen in past generations. Of the four military branches, the Survey Corps now stood unquestionably at the top, admired, respected, and envied. Young boys and girls whispered excitedly, many dreaming of joining the Corps themselves. It was a far cry from the days when the uniform invited ridicule. Locke encouraged this wave of enthusiasm, but he would never force enlistment. A blade wielded by unwilling hands was worse than useless. Still, policies had changed. Only the top 20 graduates from each training corps cycle were eligible to apply for the Survey Corps. The choice remained voluntary, but the standard was absolute, no exceptions. The reason was simple. The Survey Corps could not afford mediocrity. Those who soared through training were the ones capable of keeping up with the Corps' relentless battlefield tempo. A single weak link could doom a squad. Locke had learned this truth the hard way through battlefields drenched in blood. Of course, even selecting the top 20 was not enough to maintain the Corps' numbers. The Survey Corps retained independent authority to recruit its own personnel and maintain reserve units. With expanded responsibilities and the pressure of war, Locke intended to keep the Corps at full strength at all times. As the escort rode deeper into the capital, Levi finally broke the silence. "You've done well," he said quietly, eyes scanning the cheering crowds. The faintest trace of relief softened his usually sharp expression. "I only added polish," Locke replied. "The real credit goes to you, and Kenny Ackerman." Levi's gaze cooled instantly at the name. There was no love there, not even familiarity, just distance and faint resentment. Recognizing Levi's disapproval, Locke didn't continue down that topic. Instead, he asked, "What do you think about choosing inheritors for the armored and cart titans?" Levi answered without hesitation. "No opinion. That's your job and Erwin's. I'm just an executor. Do whatever you want, just don't involve me. I'm not interested in becoming a titan." "Understood." Locke nodded, though the problem continued to gnaw at him. Every moment those two titan powers remained in use was another moment of potential trouble. Who deserves to inherit them? Who can be trusted? Who won't become a future threat? He had yet to find an ideal answer. Before he could dwell on it, the welcoming party came into view: Erwin, Zachary, and several senior officers. Erwin stepped forward immediately, the urgency in his voice poorly concealed. "Locke, those people, are they still alive?" His hands trembled slightly. For someone like Erwin, whose composure rarely cracked, that alone spoke volumes. With Erwin's strategic mind, he knew exactly what a cooperating Marleyan meant. In Locke's letter, the implications were clear: Zeke Yeager could serve as a bridge to the outside world, even to Marley's enemies. The enemy of your enemy. He was always the most useful ally. The hostile nations surrounding the Marley Empire would surely prefer aiding Parity Island as a counterbalance to Marley's ambitions. And Parity, starved for technology, resources, and allies, could not afford pride, not when the outside world already regarded them as devils. Locke nodded. "They're all in the last carriage. Given that I don't fully understand Zeke's intentions, I decided it was safer to keep him bound. His Titan's long-range capabilities pose too great a threat." Levi's jaw tightened. Even he had struggled facing the Beast Titan head-on. No one objected to Locke's caution. Zachary glanced around at the crowds watching them from a distance and lowered his voice. "Locke, are you certain a Marleyan will cooperate sincerely? Given their history with us?" Locke answered honestly. "No. I don't trust him. But we're out of time. He's the only viable path to establishing contact with the outside world, and we have no other bridge. For now, we must choose to believe him. But we will take every precaution. Zachary exhaled slowly. As long as precautions are taken. There was no safer place to speak further, so the group proceeded into the council hall. After the convoy dispersed, Locke, Erwin, and Zachary took their seats behind closed doors to discuss the matter Locke had been wrestling with since the battle. Who should inherit the armored titan and the cart titan? Locke had already discarded the idea of absorbing all titan powers personally. That path invited suspicion, fear, and internal collapse. Even allies like Erwin and Zachary would eventually grow wary. Consolidating everything in one hand was both dangerous and short-sighted. Power, to be stable, had to be shared, but only within a controlled circle. Locke's gaze swept across the table. They would decide the future of Titan power together. And with that, the real discussion began. Chapter 202. You. Locke stared at Erwin, caught off guard by the calm declaration. But within seconds, surprise gave way to clarity. Erwin was an excellent choice. Still, Locke hesitated. Erwin currently handled the reorganization of the military police brigade and the garrison regiment, responsibilities far more complex than anything he had held before. Removing him now meant risking the fragile stability the walls had only just regained. Erwin noticed the concern in Locke's eyes and said frankly, "I've already begun training a successor. And, if I'm honest, management is not my passion. I was not born to sit inside the walls sorting documents. I was made to explore beyond them. Now that we know there are humans beyond the sea, and that their technology far surpasses ours, I wish to see it with my own eyes." "I understand," Locke said quietly. Keeping Erwin confined to administrative work was a waste of his talent. In truth, the commander's place was always at the front, shaping the future of mankind with every decision he carved out in the unknown. Locke continued, "We currently hold two Titan powers we can seize, the armored Titan and the cart Titan. You may choose either. But you should understand, the cost of inheriting a Titan is steep." Erwin did not flinch. 13 years is enough. More than enough. I believe in you, Locke. Under your leadership, Parity will seize its own destiny. Locke let out a tired laugh. "Commander, hearing you say that puts pressure on me." Zachary interjected with perfect timing. "Erwin is correct. Locke, you can do this. You're the only one who can." The more Zachary observed Locke, the more convinced he became. Locke's strategic foresight, his unconventional thinking, his unshakable ambition, none of it was comparable to the previous regime. Rhodes had clung to power out of fear. Locke wielded power for progress. Parity Island could lose anyone. Except Locke. "Let's table that," Locke said, gathering himself. "Commander, choose your Titan. The armored Titan is a defensive powerhouse, the cart Titan excels in mobility and transport. Both are valuable. Every Titan had its own battlefield. When used well, any of the 9 could change the world." Erwin considered briefly, then spoke without hesitation. "I'll inherit the cart Titan." "Very well." Locke accepted the decision immediately. The next hour was spent aligning plans, how to handle Zeke, how to approach outside nations, how to stabilize Parity while preparing for the world beyond. The goal was no longer to hide. To survive, Parity must join the world. To win, Parity must rise above it. When their preparations were complete, the 3 descended into the dungeon to meet Zeke. The moment they stepped inside, Dina Fritz hurried to them, her eyes full of pleading. "Locke, Zeke has agreed to cooperate. Could you please remove his restraints?" Erwin and Zachary exchanged a glance. They did not know Dina's origins, but both could infer she was not a native. Someone Locke trusted. But only to a point. Locke responded evenly. "Not yet. But don't worry, soon he'll be free to move within the interior. You and Grisha will accompany him, and our soldiers will ensure everyone's safety." "Thank you," Dina murmured, though a faint disappointment flickered in her eyes. Locke nodded politely, though inwardly he remained skeptical of her. He stepped toward the cells. Inside, Zeke was bound by reinforced chains. Unlike Peek and Reiner, his mouth was not gagged. Upon seeing the three leaders approach, Zeke narrowed his eyes. "So, you're the ones in power here?" "You're quick," Locke replied. Zachary frowned at the messy bindings. No sense of artistry whatsoever, disgraceful. Erwin sidestepped away from him instinctively. He had heard rumors of Zachary's unusual hobbies. He didn't approve, but he didn't criticize either. Turning back to Zeke, Erwin said, "Locke has explained the terms of cooperation. We're here to confirm one thing." He paused. "Are you truly willing to cooperate with Parody Island?" Dina stepped forward reflexively. "Zeke is willing." But her intervention was ignored. Zeke inhaled slowly, then said, "I have unfinished goals, and I don't intend to die in this cell. Cooperation is my only choice." "A wise one," Erwin said quietly. He exchanged a subtle look with Zachary, both nodded. Then, guided by Locke, they stepped toward the adjacent iron cage, where Peakfinger lay bound, restrained, and silent. Erwin's expression tightened for a brief moment, then steadied. He stepped closer, lowered his voice, and whispered. Chapter 203, south of Parody Island, atop the wall of the Shiganshina district. Bang, bang, bang. A series of rapid, heavy steps approached from afar. A massive figure sprinted toward the southernmost edge of the wall, leapt from the 40-meter height without hesitation, and landed with ease. The fall was nothing to him. Drawn by the impact, several pure titans turned toward the disturbance. But before they could converge, the figure had already broken through their loose encirclement and rushed south at tremendous speed. "We'll rest once we reach the forest of giant trees." "Thank you for your hard work, Commander," Locke said to Erwin, who now carried the form of the cart titan. Zeke, sitting beside him, watched with a complicated expression. "The cart titan isn't as fragile as you think. Under normal conditions, it can maintain its titan form for a month. With Erwin's stamina, despite no formal training, he should handle at least a week." Petra shook her head, still worried. "Even so, we shouldn't push it. The Corps has only just begun using these titan abilities. Once we reach the forest, we should rest properly. It's safer." The massive titan rumbled in a hoarse voice. "There's an abandoned base at the forest's edge. We can stay there for the night, assuming we reach it without issue." Erwin had already devoured Peak and inherited the power of the cart titan. Now, in titan form, he was carrying Locke, Petra, and Zeke toward the southern coastline, Marley's primary landing point. Once there, Zeke was to establish contact with the secret operatives of the Volunteer Army, the anti-Marleyan alliance hidden within the Marley military. Through them, Locke hoped to forge an initial connection with forces outside the island. Whether that cooperation would succeed, Zeke could not guarantee. Everything depended on how Locke handled the negotiations. But in essence, their goals aligned. Most members of the Volunteer Army were survivors of nations Marley had destroyed, people who had lost their homes and families. Their final objective was to take revenge and bring down the Marley Empire. Locke's ultimate goal was similar. Liberate the Eldians. Destroy Marley's colonial empire. Marley would never willingly abandon the Eldian people, they were its most powerful weapons of conquest. Peaceful negotiations were impossible. In an unequal world, brute force remained the true arbiter. Locke accepted this reality. If they avoided the fight, slavery was the only future awaiting the island. He refused to allow that future to arrive. Zeke understood this as well. Though he hid it expertly throughout his life, his loyalty to Marley was shallow at best. He had long harbored doubts, long kept secret contact with the volunteers, long waited for a chance to shift the fate of the Eldians. That opportunity now stood before him. Locke was using Zeke. Zeke was using Locke. For now, that mutual exploitation created cooperation. But one day it would collapse, their ultimate goals were simply too different. The cart titan continued its steady, powerful gallop. Its speed and endurance far outmatched any horse. Pure titans were left behind almost instantly, unable to catch up or even track the blur moving across the plains. Even abnormal titans posed no real threat unless something obstructed Erwin's path. Compared to the armored titan, the cart titan's utility was far greater right now. It could carry people and equipment across the island with unmatched speed, completely changing Parady's mobility and communication. Had Dina Fritz been able to fully master the founding titan's power, none of this would have been necessary. But she could not, and Locke did not trust her enough to bring her. He brought only Petra. With the cart titan's speed, a journey that would normally take days was completed in less than one. When the towering trees of the giant forest finally came into view, Locke exhaled softly. Once they crossed the forest, the sea awaited them. His first real chance to see it. If Armin knew about this, he'd be beside himself. Aaron and Mikasa, too. The thought brought a small, gentle smile to Locke's face, something that made Zeke pause. In his mind, Locke was like Levi, cold, unshakable, terrifying. A smile did not belong on that kind of man. But Petra noticed something else entirely. It had been a long time since she'd seen Locke smile like this. Ever since the coup, the death of the old king, and the burden of rebuilding an entire nation, Locke had rarely shown that softness. It had been buried under pressure only Petra, Emer, and a handful of others had truly witnessed. The past few months had changed everything. Steam engines were already in mass production. Parady Island had stepped into the industrial age. The world was changing, and so was he. Chapter 204, Night settled over the forest of giant trees like a heavy curtain, swallowing the last faint traces of daylight. In the darkness, only the small bonfire Locke and the others had prepared kept the shadows at bay. Each crackle of burning wood echoed softly in the vast forest, reminding them that even far from the walls, there was still warmth and life. The flames reflected in their eyes, and for a moment, the constant tension that came with living outside the walls eased. Locke, Erwin, Petra, and Zeke sat in a small circle, the quiet air mixing with the faint scent of wood and simmering food. Petra lifted the lid of the metal pot they had set over the fire. The aroma that escaped was rich and warm, drifting through the camp and instantly drawing attention. Zeke was the first to comment, leaning slightly closer with exaggerated appreciation. "It smells good. Your cooking is impressive." Petra's expression barely changed. She simply nodded politely, her amber eyes calm but distant. Zeke noticed, of course. He was used to being met with suspicion now, Petra was no exception. He forced a smile, but his gaze dimmed. Locke had been the only one treating him neutrally so far. Everyone else regarded him as a threat, an enemy, or something worse. And while Zeke understood why, it still stung. Locke's voice broke the silence. "Petra, how much longer?" Petra clicked her tongue lightly. "A few minutes. Be patient. Even as the commander, you're still hopeless in the kitchen." Locke's shoulders tensed a little, as it struck. "That's harsh." Petra laughed, soft and bright, the sound momentarily warming the cold night. Even Erwin gave a small smile. Somehow, the familiarity of everyday scolding made the unfamiliar forest less intimidating. While waiting, Locke shifted closer to Erwin. "How are you holding up?" 3 days had passed since Erwin consumed Peak and inherited the cart titan. Through Zeke's guidance, he had learned quickly, but Locke still needed confirmation. Erwin exhaled, watching the moonlight glitter across the metal bracers on his forearm. "Better than expected. No strain so far. The endurance of the cart titan is impressive." Zeke nodded. The previous inheritor could maintain the form for nearly a month. "With your physical fitness, a week is nothing." Erwin shook his head. "That only means I have to work harder." The weight behind his words wasn't lost on anyone. Becoming a titan was not something he took lightly. But now that he carried that burden, Erwin threw himself into it with the same resolve he brought to every mission. He had seen the state of the world through countless fragments of inherited memory. Marley's armies. Their expanding fleets. Their artillery. Their sheer numbers. Their unstoppable appetite. The realization had changed him. Parody Island had been slow, sheltered, stagnant. A place forgotten by time. Even now, with Locke driving it forward, the gap between them and the outside world was terrifyingly wide. Erwin knew that if they failed to narrow that gap soon, then Parody Island and the Eldian people would eventually vanish. Locke understood this, too. He'd seen it in Erwin's eyes the moment he awakened from the transformation. Zeke poked at the fire with a stick. You know, with the way you think, you'd fit well in Marley's central command. They admire competence. Erwin's brow twitched. They can admire me from a distance. Petra burst into laughter, a release of tension they all needed. Silence settled again, but a warm one, the type shared by tired comrades. Eventually, Zeke spoke once more seriously than before. Once we reach the coast, don't approach the shoreline until I say so. Marley has patrol ships sweeping the area. If they spot us, they'll fire without hesitation, Locke finished. Petra frowned. Even at the sight of a Titan? I thought you were valuable to them. Zeke's smile twisted into something brittle. Valuable tools are only valuable until they threaten the hand holding them. Petra's eyes softened. Locke didn't respond, but Zeke could tell he understood. The world is changing, Zeke continued quietly. Marley is consuming nations like wildfire. The volunteers you keep asking about, they're survivors. People whose homelands were crushed, whose families were slaughtered. Their hatred for Marley is quite real. Locke nodded. Then our interests align. Only if you earn their trust, Zeke warned. But yes, your goals and theirs intersect. There was conviction in Locke's gaze, steady enough that even Zeke found himself believing in it. Petra suddenly gasped. The soup! I forgot to stir it. Erwin blinked. Locke closed his eyes. Zeke sighed. We are going to die because of your cooking someday, Locke murmured. Petra's embarrassed shriek echoed through the forest, scattering a few night birds. That night, none of them slept poorly. High among the towering trees, they were safe from wandering Titans. For once, Locke's mind was quiet. Morning came with soft rays piercing through the canopy. After a simple breakfast, the group continued toward the southern edge of the forest. The giant forest was dense and tangled, slowing Erwin's pace. In his cart Titan form, he crushed whatever blocked the way, while Zeke, now in his beast Titan form, dispatched the Titans that stumbled nearby. Despite the hostility between them, Zeke and Erwin worked efficiently, almost instinctively. Locke observed them with quiet calculation. Zeke was cooperating for now. But there would come a time when their paths diverged. Locke could already see the ideological abyss between them, one that could never be bridged. Petra walked beside him, brushing leaves from her hair. We're almost out. Good. The forest thinned. Sunlight grew stronger. The trees parted. And then? Grasslands. Endless, rolling, golden grasslands stretching into the distance. Zeke pointed ahead. Cross that plain, and you'll see it. Locke's chest tightened. The sea. His first step beyond the walls. His first glimpse of the world. A world he intended to change. A world he intended to challenge. A world he intended to conquer, if that was the price for Eldian freedom. Locke's eyes sharpened. The wind carried the faint smell of salt. And for the first time since leaving the walls, he felt gravity pulling him forward, toward the unknown. Toward the future. Chapter 205, The forest of giant trees was quiet under the silver wash of moonlight. Only the soft crackle of burning firewood broke the silence, spreading faint warmth beneath the looming shadows of ancient trunks. The night outside the walls was always heavy with danger, yet in this hidden clearing, the flames brought a fragile sense of peace. Locke sat with the others around the fire, watching the embers pulse softly in the darkness. Even here, far from the protection of Wall Maria, the flickering light eased the tension tugging at everyone's thoughts. The scent of simmering stew slowly drifted through the clearing, lifting the mood one breath at a time. "It smells surprisingly good," Zeke admitted, nose angled toward the bubbling iron pot. "Your cooking skills are better than I expected." Petra didn't respond except for a polite, tight smile. Her eyes remained sharp and wary every time they fell on Zeke. No matter how cooperative he acted, she couldn't forget the carnage left behind by the beast titan. Noticing her guarded posture, Zeke sighed faintly. The distrust was understandable. In truth, it stung more than he liked to admit. To the people of the walls, he wasn't an ally, he was an enemy who happened, temporarily, to be useful. Locke shifted his gaze away from the flames. "Is it ready?" he asked, leaning toward Petra. "Almost," Petra replied, giving him an exasperated look. "For someone who's the commander now, you still hover around food like a kid." Locke's expression froze, caught somewhere between embarrassment and defeat. Petra's laugh broke the tension like sunlight through clouds. Even Erwin's lips twitched in amusement where he sat slightly apart, leaning against the trunk of a massive tree. Locke cleared his throat. "Captain, how are you feeling now?" Since inheriting the cart titan, Erwin had pushed himself relentlessly. With Zeke's guidance, he had bypassed many of the early hurdles, mastering the titan's endurance and mobility with startling speed. Still, Locke couldn't shake his concern. Erwin nodded. "Surprisingly well. No severe fatigue, mostly a dull ache. The endurance of the cart titan is even better than I expected." Zeke lifted an eyebrow. The previous inheritor could maintain the titan form for nearly a month without collapsing. "You've only held it for 3 days, he reminded. "With your physical condition, you're nowhere near your limit." "1 month," Erwin murmured, lowering his eyes thoughtfully. "Then I still have much to improve." He wasn't wrong. Now that he held titan power himself, Erwin understood with stark clarity the gulf between Parody Island and the rest of the world. Marley's military strength dwarfed the Wall's combined armies. Their fleets, their airships, their artillery, everything about their technology overshadowed anything Parody possessed. If Marley ever freed its forces from overseas conflict, Parody Island would be crushed. This reality weighed heavily on Erwin's shoulders. For the first time in years, the brilliant commander felt something close to dread. "You're already doing well," Zeke said, almost genuinely. He had spoken with Erwin enough these past few days to see the man's brilliance. "You might actually surpass the previous inheritor in raw endurance." "Even so," Erwin answered quietly, "we must become far stronger than this." Zeke didn't argue. He knew Erwin was right. Erwin's gaze hardened suddenly. "When we reach the coast, make sure you stay hidden," Zeke warned again. "Marley has patrol ships in the nearby waters. If they spot you, especially Locke, there will be no room for negotiation." Petra frowned. "Is the Beast Titan's power not valuable to Marley? Would they really kill you?" Zeke's expression darkened. For a moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Value doesn't matter. Fear does." His eyes drifted toward the distant horizon where the sea lay. "Marley devours everything around it. The more powerful you are, the more they fear what you might become." Locke nodded slowly. "The volunteers you mentioned, they're the remnants of nations Marley destroyed. People with nothing left except revenge." Zeke glanced at him, surprised but not denying it. "Yes. Their lives and worlds were burned away. Their only goal now is to bring Marley down." "Then we already share a goal," Locke said. "Help me liberate the Eldians, and I'll help them destroy the Empire choking the world." A faint smile tugged at Zeke's mouth. "If you can truly promise that, then cooperation should come naturally." Locke's certainty was unwavering. Compared to the unstable, xenophobic interior government of the past, the new Parody Island under Locke's leadership was far more prepared to accept help and offer strength in return. "Yes," Locke repeated calmly. "This time, cooperation is guaranteed." Before Zeke could reply, Petra suddenly gasped. Ah, the soup! Locke and Erwin stared blankly. Petra scrambled frantically to rescue the nearly overcooked stew, and Locke's laughter finally broke through his serious facade. Erwin let out a chuckle. Even Zeke's expression softened, if only for a moment. That night, high above the forest floor, the four of them slept more peacefully than expected. The dense canopy and towering trunks protected them from wandering titans. Morning came quietly. After Petra's warm breakfast, they set off again, Erwin transforming into the cart titan and plowing swiftly through the forest. The trees thickened, thinned, then fell away as they emerged onto a wide stretch of grassland glowing gold under the new sun. Zeke raised a hand. Once we cross this grass, the sea is right behind it. Locke, Petra, and Erwin all felt tension drain from their chests. By mid-afternoon, the endless blue horizon finally appeared. No edge in sight. Petra whispered, breath-catching. "This is the ocean." Her face filled with awe, the salty wind playing across her hair. Even knowing the sea existed through Bertholdt's inherited memories, she had never fully understood it until this moment. Locke remained calmer, but his eyes softened. Finally. "We're here." Zeke wiped the sand from his boots. "Listen carefully. I'll contact the volunteers. It may take 3 days." He pointed out toward the water. "Stay hidden. If Marley's patrol ships see you, everything ends here." Erwin nodded firmly. "We understand." Zeke's gaze sharpened. "I'm serious. If Marley learns I brought Parity soldiers here, they'll assume treachery. They'll kill me before they even bother to question you." Locke answered calmly, "Then we won't be seen." Zeke stared at him a heartbeat longer, then transformed into the beast titan, splashing forward into the waves until salt water reached his knees. A moment later, he disappeared beneath the surface, swimming toward the distant horizon. As soon as Zeke was gone, Erwin's voice dropped. "Are we staying here?" "No." Locke pointed toward a rocky cliff overlooking the coastline. "We wait from there." They moved without delay, Erwin shifting back into human form once they reached cover. He sank against a thick cluster of bushes, exhaling slowly. "Captain, are you all right?" Petra asked again. "Just fatigue," Erwin assured her. "Nothing dangerous." Locke scanned the horizon. A line of smoke rose from the sea. A warship. Not a simple vessel like the Survey Corps used, this ship was armored with iron plating and fitted with multiple cannons. As it drew closer, Locke recognized it immediately as a Marleyan design. "It's powerful," Petra whispered. "Marley's navy is decades beyond us," Erwin muttered, jaw tight. "If the walls weren't so deep inland, that ship alone could erase half the island's defenses." Locke watched silently. Someday, Parity Island must build ships like that, or better. Someday, they must sail freely on these waters. And someday, they must confront Marley on equal footing. "We'll have our own fleet," Locke said quietly. "Sooner than anyone expects." Erwin nodded. Petra said nothing, just clenched her hands and kept watching. Then Locke murmured, barely audible. "By now, Grisha's time should be nearly up. Aaron should have inherited the attack titan." His expression sharpened. "With Grisha gone, Dina Fritz will be harder to control." "I miscalculated." The sea wind swallowed his words, and the warship drifted steadily across the horizon, unaware that the future of Parity Island watched from the shadows. Chapter 206. 3 days passed in quiet tension along the desolate southern shoreline of Parity Island. The wind carried the sharp scent of salt across the rocks and dunes as Locke, Erwin, and Petra remained hidden among the cliffs overlooking the coast. Each night had grown heavier with unease, each hour thick with the weight of unanswered uncertainty. For Locke and Erwin, two of the most influential figures in the newly reshaped order behind the walls, time was a luxury they could not afford to waste. Even after purging much of the old royal loyalists lurking within the interior, no one believed the threat had been entirely extinguished. There were undoubtedly survivors, informants, and opportunists waiting for their chance to undermine the fragile new regime. Wall Sina was still crawling with privileged officers resistant to change. The garrison corps was in the middle of restructuring. The military police had barely stabilized. And now, both leaders had voluntarily left the center of power. It was an unavoidable risk, but a risk nonetheless. Locke's fingers tapped the hilt of his blade as he stared at the sea. "We can't stay away for too long," he murmured. Erwin agreed silently. Even without words, Locke could feel the weight of the commander's thoughts. Despite the sweeping reforms, despite the victories against Marley's infiltrators, Paradis Island was still a nation half-formed, its roots strong, but its soil unstable. They had taken the throne, but had not yet solidified the foundations beneath it. If something happened while they were gone, the damage could be irreversible. Petra sensed the tension as well, though she said nothing. She kept her hand hovering near her blade handle, scanning the distant shoreline every few seconds. The fourth day was about to begin when Petra suddenly straightened. "Look! Over there!" Locke and Erwin followed her gaze. Far in the distance, just past the shallow waves, a small boat drifted toward shore. It moved slowly but deliberately, riding the current along the southwestern coastline, the location Zeke had promised. Locke's voice lowered, calm but sharp. "Don't reveal yourselves yet. Observe." Petra and Erwin both nodded. The three of them sank lower behind the stone ridge, eyes locked on the approaching vessel. As it neared the shore, 5 figures disembarked, cautious, scanning their surroundings carefully. "They're searching for someone," Petra whispered. Erwin observed their formation, posture, and equipment with a commander's eye. No ambush nearby, at least none visible. "It looks clean," Locke agreed softly. "But we won't assume anything." He turned to Petra. "Stay here. This is not negotiable." Petra inhaled sharply, ready to protest, but the look in Locke's eyes made her stop. He wasn't speaking as her superior or partner in battle. He was speaking as someone who refused to risk her life unnecessarily. "I understand," she said quietly. "If anything happens, I'll transform immediately." Erwin gave her a brief nod, part approval, part acknowledgement of a hidden truth. Petra was also a Titan shifter. Locke's decision to bring her instead of Levi was now logical rather than personal. "We should move," Locke said. "Before they decide we're not coming." Erwin sliced his pal, and lightning flashed. The cart Titan rose to its place, lowering its body so Locke could climb onto its back. Once mounted, Erwin sprinted across the sand, carrying Locke toward the 5 strangers. Behind them, Petra clutched the handle of her blade and whispered a small prayer, for Locke, for Erwin, for the fragile future they were gambling with today. The strangers approached cautiously when Erwin stopped several dozen meters away, steam rising from his detransformation. Sand hissed beneath Locke's boots as he stepped forward alone, placing himself clearly in their line of sight. Their eyes widened, not at the cart Titan, but at Locke himself. He didn't blame them. Zeke had surely told them more than enough. Locke raised his voice. "I am Locke, commander of the Survey Corps of Paradis Island. This is Erwin Smith, commander of the military police and acting head of the garrison corps." The tall, short-haired woman leading the foreign group stepped ahead of her companions. She stood straight, posture crisp and professional, military through and through. "I'm Yelena," she said. "Major of the Marleyan army, at least in title. These are my comrades." Her introduction confirmed what Zeke had already hinted at. These were volunteers, Marleyan soldiers who were not loyal to Marley at all. One by one, she listed their names and roles. Locke watched them carefully, memorizing every face, posture, and tone. When the introductions finished, Locke didn't waste a second. "Zeke told you our intentions. So I'll ask directly, what is your perspective on cooperation?" Yelena's friendly expression vanished. Steele replaced it. "We can provide technological assistance," she said. "But we won't give anything for free." She took a step closer, wearing a sharp, eyes narrowed with scrutiny. "What I want to know," she continued, is what Parody Island can offer us in return. Locke didn't blink. A chance for revenge. Those 4 words cut through the air like drawn steel. The volunteers exchanged glances. Yelena folded her arms. Against Marley, she asked. Parody Island alone intends to defeat the empire that crushed every nation standing here? Locke's expression didn't waver. Yes. A dark-skinned man behind Yelena scoffed. Do you even know how many troops Marley has? Their fleets? Their weaponry? Locke exhaled slowly. I know, he said. We are inferior in numbers. Inferior in equipment. Inferior in technology. He lifted his chin slightly. But we possess something Marley will never have. Yelena frowned. And what is that? The founding Titan, Locke said calmly. And tens of thousands of Titans across the island, each one capable of becoming a weapon. Soldiers who do not tire or retreat. Soldiers who crush armies by their very existence. The volunteers fell silent. Locke continued. With those forces, we can stand against Marley. With your technology, we can surpass them. His eyes were cold, unwavering. If revenge is what you want, there is no alliance more valuable than this one. Yelena stared at him for several seconds, shock flickering behind her usually impassive expression. She had expected fear or foolish bravado. But Locke's confidence was different. Calculated. Controlled. Absolute. The kind of confidence that only came from someone who had already chosen to reshape the future by force. At last, Yelena's lips curled into a slow smile. Then perhaps, she said quietly, we truly have something to discuss. Chapter 207, the moment Locke finished speaking, silence swept through the group of volunteers. Sea wind rolled in steady drafts across the coastline, tugging at uniforms and hair, but none of Yelena's people so much as flinched. They studied Locke with a mixture of restraint and disbelief. If you truly possess the power you just mentioned, Yelena finally said, lowering her voice, then we naturally have no reason to refuse. Her tone shifted suddenly, sharp and pragmatic. But we can't simply trust your words. If we are to take this seriously, we need to witness it with our own eyes. Locke didn't flinch. He expected this. Of course, he replied evenly. But if you vanish from Marley's surveillance for several days, won't that cause trouble for you? A patrol unit disappearing from their station would certainly raise suspicion. He wasn't speaking out of concern. He was probing. What he truly wanted wasn't just these 5 people, it was their entire intelligence network, their channels, their scientists, and the world-class technical personnel hidden behind them. 5 volunteers couldn't change Parody Island. But the force behind them could. Yelena sensed the intention but did not refute it. Instead, she explained calmly, our patrol fleet rotates once a month. We're currently 20 days away from the next rotation. Before then, Marley won't notice anything unusual. Locke nodded. In that case, he said, extending his hand, welcome to Parody Island, our distinguished guests. Yelena hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. Her grip was steady and her expression serious. If everything proceeds as expected, she said, we may soon be partners. Behind her, Anyankapon and the remaining volunteers exchanged subtle looks. Locke noted the faint flickers of surprise in their eyes, surprise not at his words, but at him. After all, as Zeke had warned the key figure ruling Parody Island was astonishingly young. Far too young, by Marleyan standards, to be dictating the direction of an entire territory. And yet here he was, calm, clear-headed, and calculating in a way that reminded them sharply of Zeke himself. Even as Yelena released Locke's hand, she continued evaluating him. How had such a youth risen to this position? What kind of war had shaped him? How had he taken command of 2 military branches? Those answers would come soon enough. Locke gave a slight nod. Let's return immediately. There's much waiting to be shown, and even more waiting to be discussed. He shot a meaningful glance at Erwin. Erwin understood instantly. A blade sliced across his palm, lightning burst, and the car titan formed once again. Its massive frame lowered to the ground to allow passengers to climb aboard. The volunteers were visibly startled. You have another titan shifter?" Anyankopon whispered. And when they learned that Petra also carried titan power, a ripple of shock spread among them. To think Parody Island, supposedly backward and isolated, possessed multiple titan abilities, all gathered under the command of a single young leader. It made their mission feel far more worthwhile. Locke helped Yelena onto Erwin's back, then Petra followed. Once secure, Erwin took off, tearing across the coastline with immense strength. Behind them, the sea wind swallowed their footprints. Petra looked back at the shrinking shore, then leaned close enough for Locke to hear over the wind. "Are we really prepared for this? What if these volunteers aren't sincere?" "They're sincere," Locke answered. "Because they need us as much as we need them." He didn't elaborate. Petra had known him long enough to recognize when he was certain of something. Yelena's voice rose above the rushing air. "Locke, may I ask something?" "Go ahead." "You said earlier that Parody Island holds the founding titan and the means to command the tens of thousands of titans roaming your lands. Is that true?" Locke didn't answer immediately. The rhythmic thundering of Erwin's gallop carried them deep between forest and cliff before he finally spoke. "If it weren't true, I wouldn't have mentioned it. And I wouldn't have dared to meet you." Yelena's expression stiffened. Anyankopon exchanged a glance with her, one filled with the weight of long-buried hopes. With the world being crushed beneath Marley's expansion, every defeated nation had dreamed of one thing, a weapon powerful enough to overthrow their oppressor. A weapon that could turn the tables. If Parody Island truly held that weapon, then for the first time in decades, the volunteers' dream might be within reach. Locke noticed the look in their eyes and allowed himself the faintest smile. "We won't disappoint you." Their return journey took hours. Only when Erwin slowed to a halt near the forest edge did the volunteers begin to fully grasp the reality before them. Titans, mindless pure titans, wandered in the distance, drawn only by instinct. But carved across the land were cleared paths, trenches, barricades, and watchposts. Parody Island had begun to change. And it had begun quickly. As Erwin shifted back into human form, visibly weary but stable, Locke asked quietly, "Can you still manage the rest of the way?" Erwin exhaled deeply. "Yes. I can keep going." Yelena observed him, impressed. The car titan's endurance is extraordinary, but adapting this quickly is even more remarkable. Locke walked beside her as they approached the outer forest line. "You said earlier," he began, "that many anti-Marley groups exist across the Empire. Are any of them willing to work with you?" Yelena paused mid-step. The question was sharp, deliberately so. "For decades," she answered, "Marley has devoured one nation after another. Some were conquered outright. Others became colonies. And with each destruction, resistance movements were born. Most die quickly," Anyankopon added. "Those who survive go into hiding. Many have no means to contact one another. Marley's propaganda and military presence crush nearly all sparks before they can grow." Locke absorbed the information silently. Yelena continued, "We, the volunteers, originated from several destroyed nations. We owe our existence to shared hatred. But our channels are limited. Marley restricts our movements and keeps a close eye on foreign-born soldiers." She looked Locke in the eye. "So even if you send someone into Marley, even if he is skilled, we cannot guarantee his safety. We cannot even guarantee communication. Internal infiltration is nearly impossible." Locke's expression didn't change, but Petra frowned slightly. "Then, how do we strike them from within?" "There are ways," Yelena said carefully. "But not ones available yet. You must stabilize Parody Island first. Develop technology. Prepare armies. Find allies." She folded her arms. "And then, when the time is right, we won't need to infiltrate Marley quietly. We'll strike openly. Locke exhaled slowly. He had expected this. Yet hearing it laid out so bluntly made the path ahead feel heavier, but no less resolute. So there truly are Eldian resistance groups? Locke pressed. Yelena hesitated, then nodded. Yes. But they are small. Fear suppresses them. Marley has conditioned Eldians for generations to hate themselves. Most won't act unless given hope. Locke murmured, hope, or a spark. Yelena nodded once. A spark powerful enough to burn through Marley's lies. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon. A spark like Parody Island. Locke did not respond immediately. His thoughts drifted, to the wall, to Dina Fritz's unstable control over the founding Titan, to Eren who likely carried the attack Titan now, to the regime still standing on fragile foundations. Everything was connected. Everything was precarious. And everything depended on the choices they made now. Understood, Locke finally said. Then we'll create that spark ourselves. Yelena studied him for several seconds. Then she smiled, not politely, not diplomatically, but with genuine anticipation. In that case, let's go see the island you intend to reshape. The journey continued, toward the walls, toward an alliance that could change the fate of nations, and toward a future where Parody Island would no longer hide, but stand. Chapter 208, Locke's gaze was steady as he faced Yelena. I'm not asking you to guarantee their survival, Locke said. But sending someone from Parody Island into Marley shouldn't be impossible, right? Yelena, who had kept a composed, almost unreadable expression during most of the return journey, paused for the first time. She studied Locke carefully, his tone, his eyes, and the confidence beneath them. If all you want is to smuggle someone in, she replied, that's possible. But you must understand, once they enter Marley, they won't return. That's not an exaggeration. That's reality. I know, Locke said quietly. But if no one takes the first step, nothing changes. There's no progress without risk. His certainty was so absolute that Yelena, who rarely admired anyone, actually smiled. I think I understand, she said softly, why you became the highest authority of Parody Island while still a teenager. Locke chuckled faintly. I only succeeded because of the people around me. I didn't do anything alone. Yelena's respect deepened. She admired strength, but she admired clarity of mind even more. And Locke possessed both in frightening concentration, without arrogance, without hesitation, without childish impulsiveness. The stiffness of earlier conversations eased, and the atmosphere gradually shifted, less tense, more honest. That night, after Petra prepared a simple meal in their cliffside shelter, the volunteers sat around the fire, speaking freely for the first time. Food had a strange way of bridging gaps. It allowed practicality to settle into familiarity, and familiarity into trust. Erwin pushed himself relentlessly, driving the cart Titan's body at full speed. What should have taken 5 days took barely 3. When they finally reached the southern edge of the Shiganshina district, the terrain looked drastically different from when they had departed. The pure Titans that once roamed here had vanished. The wrecked houses had begun repairs. Makeshift forts dotted the outer wall. Parody Island was no longer shrinking in fear. It was growing. With the front line secure and the Survey Corps now equipped with powerful artillery, lightning spears, modernized ODM gear, and Dina Fritz's partial use of the founding Titan, reclaiming Shiganshina had been smoother than they dared hope. Once near the gates, Erwin climbed out of his Titan form and mounted a horse. A squad of elite soldiers, Survey Corps veterans, rode out to meet them. Locke, Petra, Erwin, Yelena, Anyankapon, and the other volunteers followed them into the city. As they passed through the gates, Yelena looked up, really looked, for the first time. The walls were colossal. The people were rebuilding tirelessly. Uniformed soldiers stood watch with practiced precision. This city has existed behind these walls for more than 100 years. She murmured. And still no one wanted to go beyond them? Petra answered before Locke could. Many did. And those who tried died. The Survey Corps was founded for that reason, to explore the world beyond the walls. For a long time, we were the weakest of the military branches. Now, things have changed. The Survey Corps, Yelena repeated. Just from the name, it sounds like a division built for discovery. Locke gestured toward the soldiers escorting them. Every one of them survived battles against Titans. Give them weapons advanced enough, and they'll match any 3 Marleyan units. The pride in his voice was unmistakable and justified. Yelena nodded, saying nothing. Truthfully, she agreed. The Survey Corps soldiers walked like veterans. There was a sharpness in their posture, a calmness in their eyes, an awareness impossible to fake. Even without modern rifles, Parody Island was not defenseless. In a temporary command post within the reclaimed district, Dina Fritz waited. When Locke entered, Dina rose quickly. Locke, you're back. Zeke returned safely to Marley, he reassured her. For now, we can assume he wasn't discovered. The relief in Dina's eyes was faint but sincere. Then Locke gestured toward the volunteers standing behind him. These are the volunteers from within Marley's army, the ones Zeke mentioned. Yelena studied Dina, especially after hearing her surname. Fritz, she whispered. You're of the royal bloodline. Dina's expression tightened faintly. I was, she answered. When Eldia fell, that title meant nothing. I'm only a woman trying to fulfill the hopes of those who died for our future. Locke understood the undertone immediately. Grisha was gone. That meant one thing. Aaron had inherited the attack titan. But now was not the time to dwell on that. He turned Dina toward the volunteers. They need proof. Since Shiganshina is under control again, show them what you can do with the founding titan. Dina nodded. My control isn't perfect yet. I can command pure titans within a kilometer, but only simple actions. Their minds are empty, they can't handle anything complex. Despite her restraint, sorrow filled her expression. These titans were a people, Eldians stripped of their humanity. That's enough for now, Locke said gently. We don't need full mastery. We only need you to prevent titans from attacking us. Leave the rest to us. Yelena observed the exchange silently. She did not know the depths of Locke's mistrust toward Dina. She did not know how dangerous an unstable founding titan could be. She saw only competence and potential. That was enough for her. Soon, the entire group descended into a secluded underground space. There, Dina cut her palm, lightning burst forth, and she transformed into a titan, vast, imposing, unmistakably regal. With a single command, several pure titans moved in unified, synchronized motions. Not perfectly, but undeniably controlled. The volunteers stiffened. Anyankapon inhaled sharply. Then Yelena stepped forward, her expression deadly serious. She placed a hand over her heart, stood tall upon the titan's outstretched palm, and addressed Locke directly. Then it's true, she said. You possess the founding titan. You can command other titans. And you have more titan shifters than we were told. Her eyes held the fierce light of conviction. In that case, the volunteers will commit fully. We will help Parody Island rise, and together, bring down the Marley Empire. The chamber fell into silence. Locke's eyes narrowed, not out of suspicion, but out of calculation. This was the beginning. The moment the world would start to change. Chapter 209, Mainland Region, south of Walmaria. The buildings are incredibly extravagant. You can tell the former rulers here lived for comfort. Studying the rebuilt mainland districts with an expression that mixed surprise and curiosity, Yelena couldn't help commenting aloud. After spending several days traveling across Parody Island, witnessing its mix of resilience and backwardness, the stark contrast of these redeveloped districts left her quietly impressed. Now that she had made her decision, full willingness to cooperate with Locke, she would not simply return to Marley immediately. A formal inspection was essential. Only after understanding Parody Island's current status could she properly organize the correct technical personnel, plan resource allocations, and begin meaningful technological support. Blindly transferring foreign equipment to an unprepared nation would be disastrous. Traveling north from the recovered Shiganshina district, Yelena witnessed more than she expected: a resilient people, capable soldiers, and civilians who had thrown themselves wholeheartedly into reconstruction. The simplicity of life inside the walls and the raw earnestness of the workers filled her with both admiration and concern. For all its courage, Parody Island was far behind the outside world. Had the power of the Titans not existed, this secluded island would have been swallowed by Marley generations ago. Hearing her words, Locke chuckled faintly. Why? Are you implying I don't know how to enjoy life? Yelena shook her head, grinning. You're not that type of person, Locke. Even without knowing you long, anyone can see that. The reply genuinely surprised Locke, though he let it slip by with only a small smile. Well, whether I enjoy anything or not, you should have a clearer picture of us now. Come, there's something else I want to show you. What sort of thing? Yelena's curiosity rekindled instantly. You'll know when we get there, Locke answered, then exchanged a glance with Erwin Smith. Erwin broke away from the group. Matters regarding long-term cooperation, foreign power balancing, and national security needed to be discussed with Zachary, whose calculating mind and political instincts were unmatched within the walls. After all, no matter how sincere the volunteers seemed, Parody Island could never allow an external group, especially one as experienced and resourceful as Yelena's, to grow unchecked within its borders. The regime needed their help, not a shadow government developing behind their backs. Necessary safeguards were essential. Locke led Yelena and her escorts toward the heart of Parody Island's rising scientific center, Hanji's research division. Even before entering the main grounds, the rapid shift in atmosphere struck them. If the rest of the island had shown backward infrastructure, poor tools, and rebuilding efforts, this place was another world entirely. Steam hissed. Metal clanged. Testers shouted to one another as equipment was hauled, assembled, or disassembled. Engineers scribbled on papers. Heavy tracks rattled across the compound as prototypes were moved. Yelena stopped in her tracks, stunned. This is Parody Island? Steam locomotives puffed across a small track loop as field testers calibrated their performance. On another platform, a mobile artillery prototype fired a short burst at reinforced targets in the distance. Nearby, ODM technicians demonstrated a new harness intended to work with steam-powered equipment. The entire facility thrummed with overwhelming, unrestrained ambition. It's unbelievable, Yelena murmured. I thought Parody Island's technology barely compared to Marley's poorest colonies. I might owe you an apology, Locke. My assumptions were far too shallow. Locke remained calm, but pride flickered in his expression. We understand perfectly well that Titan power alone won't protect Parody Island forever, he said. Technology grows. Nations evolve. And one day, someone will create a weapon that can kill any Titan with ease. If we remain stagnant, our annihilation would only be a matter of time. He walked slowly as he spoke, letting Yelena absorb the sights around them. So the first thing I did after stabilizing the government was reorganize all scientific personnel under one banner. We restructured the research division, consolidated resources, and pushed everything into development. Steam engines. Transportation. New weapons. Utilities. Education. Information circulation. He glanced at her. All of this progress was achieved in just half a year. Yelena could not hide her astonishment. Half a year. That's impossible. Not impossible, Locke said softly. Just necessary. He continued. Of course, Parody Island is still far behind Marley. We're centuries behind in some fields. That's why your help is essential. But we're no longer crawling in the dark, now we're sprinting. Yelena's previously stoic demeanor cracked. Awe replaced doubt, and admiration replaced caution. She had underestimated Locke. Not just his strength, but his mind. And his vision. This boy, No, this leader could genuinely reshape the future. When it came to long-term national evolution, Locke was not merely thinking about Titans. He was thinking about society itself. The worldview of the people. The intellectual base. Education. Open thought. Scientific literacy. The kind of transformation that took generations. He was accelerating it in months. This level of foresight was terrifying and inspiring. Locke, she said quietly, you truly carry the weight of a nation on your shoulders. I can see now why Zeke spoke of you with such guarded respect. Before Locke could respond, an energetic voice pierced through the air. Locke! You're finally here. Hanji Zoe came barreling toward them, lab coat flapping wildly, goggles perched crookedly on her forehead. Come look at this. Look! The new steam engine prototype is functioning. The framework is stable. The efficiency is far superior to the older model. We're going to change the world. Locke pinched the bridge of his nose. You're getting older, Hanji. How are you still this excitable? Hanji puffed her cheeks indignantly. Hey! Don't ruin my moment. This research is revolutionary. Then she noticed Yelena and the others. Her eyes widened and brightened dangerously. These must be the specialists from outside the walls. The ones you said were coming. Yes, Hanji, Locke affirmed. You're free to exchange research with them. Their technological base is much more advanced than ours. Hanji's grin grew unnervingly wide. Oh, excellent. As soon as she approached, Yelena's escorts, battle-hardened, stoic soldiers, took a collective step back. No Titan had ever made them retreat, but the manic enthusiasm of Hanji Zoe apparently succeeded. Locke gave an apologetic sigh. She doesn't always have people to collaborate with. Don't mind her. Yelena forced a smile. No, she's charming. Truly. But as Hanji grabbed two of Yelena's engineers by the wrists and dragged them toward a nearby test bench, their horrified expressions said otherwise. Locke exhaled softly, watching the chaos unfold. The alliance had officially begun. And there was no turning back. Chapter 210. The moment Yelena stepped into the main laboratory complex, her composure cracked. Her eyes widened at the sight of the rumbling engines, the towering machinery, the web of pipes breathing steam into the rafters, and the tight clusters of researchers and technicians buzzing with purpose. Unbelievable, she breathed, almost under her breath. Then, catching herself, she straightened, her expression tightening with embarrassment. Forgive me. I've been rude again. It's simply difficult to reconcile this with the information we had. None of us imagined Parody Island had advanced this far in just a few months. Locke stood beside her with an easy, quiet smile. Human potential is limitless. Especially when survival depends on it. Ahead of them, Hang Zoe moved through the laboratory like a spark dancing across kindling, gesturing wildly, muttering to herself, then suddenly grabbing one of Yelena's accompanying technicians by the shoulders as she fired off a rapid string of questions. The poor man looked half terrified, half entranced. Locke continued, his tone warm but steady. To reach this point so quickly, Commander Hang has carried an immeasurable share of the burden. Parody Island would not have moved a single step forward in modern science without her. That much is obvious, Yelena agreed. Her voice carried a rare softness. The contribution of a brilliant researcher outweighs that of most soldiers. War today is shaped by industry and machines, not only by bodies and blades. She paused, studying Locke's expression. Captain Locke, would you mind guiding me through the rest of the laboratory? To evaluate how we can assist you, I need a clear picture of your current technological foundation. Originally, Yelena had come with the intent of leveraging Parody Island's Titan power to topple Marley. But after witnessing not only the Titans but the momentum of innovation, after feeling the faint but growing pulse of technological ambition on this island, her goals expanded. Titan strength alone was not enough, a civilization poised for rapid advancement was what she needed as an ally. And Locke knew it. He sensed her shift in attitude, subtle but unmistakable, and could not help the quiet breath of relief escaping him. The anti-Marleyan volunteers were crucial, far beyond their small number. They were the key that could open the gates to the knowledge Parity had lost for a century. And now, the woman spearheading them was slowly turning from observer to collaborator. In the hours that followed, Locke guided Yelena through every chamber of the facility. From the steam compression prototypes, to the early blueprints for rail carriages, to the crude but promising engines designed for large-scale machinery. He walked her through metalworking sections, chemistry stations, and artillery refinement rooms where new barrels and shell casings were under stress testing. When they entered the main engine testing hall, Hang practically leapt toward them. "Look!" she shouted, her goggles pushed up into her frizz hair. "Do you see this? We reduced the frame weight by a full 30%. And the torque output, oh, the torque output, Locke, this is going to change how we move everything." Yelena blinked, overwhelmed. "People can truly fly? And these carts that move without horses, are they common technology outside the island?" Hang nodded vigorously, immediately pivoting into explanation mode. "Yes. Yes. Rail systems, steam vehicles, troop transports, mass mobility is the foundation of modern war. With these, an army becomes a storm. Tanks, well, we don't have tanks yet, but the concept." She would have continued indefinitely if Locke hadn't tapped her shoulder lightly. He smiled an apology. "She gets excited." "I can see that," Yelena said, unable to hide a laugh. "She's charming in her own way." Hang puffed her chest proudly at that, then immediately dragged Yelena's technicians off into a corner to bombard them with more questions. They went willingly, though their expressions hinted at mild dread. Locke exhaled around a small smile. "She's been working without rest. When more researchers arrive from your side, she won't have to bear everything alone. Her job is to guide the overall direction, not burn herself out." "I'm fine," Hang yelled from across the room, misinterpreting his tone. "Completely fine." Yelena laughed again, then gave Locke a long, studying look. "You're young to worry so much about others. Leadership sits heavily on you, yet you carry it well." Locke didn't answer, only gestured that they should continue. They left the laboratory complex and made their way toward the central district. As they walked, Yelena's eyes roamed ceaselessly, inquisitive, calculating. Her mind was busy, assembling the profile of a nation long dismissed as primitive. "Where are we heading?" she asked. "To the council hall," Locke replied. "You'll meet our president. In the future, matters of civilian infrastructure, resource allocation, and population support will be coordinated with him." Yelena's gaze sharpened. "And whose side is he on?" Locke understood the true meaning of the question. "On ours," he answered without hesitation. "Every sector is under unified direction now. There are still a few remnants of the old regime hiding in the dark, but they are powerless. The people stand with us." Yelena frowned slightly. "No dissatisfaction? After such a rapid change in leadership?" Locke met her eyes, unwavering. They lived for more than a century inside stone cages. Lied to. Controlled. Treated as livestock. Under the new leadership, they have freedom of thought, rising living standards, and a future they can shape for themselves. They have no reason to resist us." He continued, voice steady, certain. "The people of Parity ask for little: safety, food, dignity. We have given them all three." Yelena looked at him for a long moment. "I see." Her admiration was not spoken aloud, but it radiated through her expression. She had met kings, military leaders, and revolutionaries. Few carried themselves like this boy, calm, measured, yet burning with purpose. Locke didn't notice the faint shift in her eyes. But Petra would have. Hang too. Yelena's thought echoed silently. He's too young for this. But if anyone can reshape the fate of this island, it might be him. Chapter 211, like Locke and Irwin, President Zachary treated Yelena and her volunteers with great importance. His tone remained measured and diplomatic, which allowed the negotiations to progress smoothly. By the end of the meeting, both sides had secured exactly what they sought. Paradis Island needed Yelena's technological expertise, knowledge they could not acquire alone after a century of isolation. And Yelena sought a foothold, a staging ground close to the Marleyan mainland where the anti-Marleyan volunteers could build strength, train troops, and prepare supplies for campaigns yet to come. In other words, both sides had found the ideal partner at the perfect time. Over the next several days, accompanied by Locke, Yelena toured every region of Paradis Island, from the walled districts to the newly reclaimed southern territories. Erwin, now bearer of the cart Titan, handled transport personally, carrying Yelena back to the coast after each round of inspections. On top of Walsina, watching Erwin disappear into the distant horizon, Locke exhaled slowly. I hope everything goes smoothly. Right now, what we need most is a quiet external environment. If the Mideast allied forces can hold Marley back longer, all the better. According to what Locke remembered from the flow of history, even 2 years later, Marley had still not fully subdued its conflict with the Mideast alliance. Most of Marley's military power remained tied down in that war, leaving them unable to focus on Paradis Island. If the timeline had not shifted too drastically, Paradis now had at least 2 years of breathing room. 2 crucial, irreplaceable years. Locke, Petra called softly beside him, let's return. Several reports are waiting for your approval. Erwin's silhouette had faded beyond the line where sky met land. Locke gave a faint nod and mounted his horse. A thought suddenly resurfaced. By the way, has Dina returned to the mainland? She returned 3 days ago, Petra replied. She's staying at Dr. Grisha's former home for now. She's waiting for further arrangements. Petra's tone stayed respectful, but she could not hide her discomfort regarding Dina Fritz. Petra trusted Locke, not Dina. Locke acknowledged her answer with a quiet sound. Then let's go back. We shouldn't keep Zachary waiting. They rode hard and reached the interior in a short time. Zachary had already prepared for the meeting. The moment Locke entered his office, he spread out a large map of the northern coastline and said directly, Locke, the construction of the northern port cannot be delayed any longer. Yelena made that very clear before she left. But the problem is this, there are still many Titans outside the northern gate. Transporting materials will be extremely difficult. Locke's answer came without hesitation. That part is easy. The pure Titans won't attack the transport caravans. Prepare the materials and the personnel you'll need. When the time comes, I'll lead the expedition myself. That northern coastline will host the first true harbor of Paradis Island, and after that, we'll have steel warships that can sail the open ocean. Despite the ambition in his tone, Locke's expression remained clear and controlled. But before that, he continued, we need a dedicated steel industry. With the formulas Yelena provided, combined with our own research, it won't be long before we can refine steel worthy of shipbuilding. Zachary nodded, energized. This is within reach. We've already begun steel refining based on her notes. The quality is lacking, yes, but with skilled craftsmen and scientist oversight, we can improve it. The island's development prospects. Locke, it's like watching a masterpiece take shape. His voice carried a kind of delighted awe. As an artist at heart, Zachary found a strange joy in watching Paradis transform, piece by piece, into something greater than it had ever been. Locke let him bask in the vision for a moment before shifting the topic. How are people responding to the outside world information? Over the past months, Locke had quietly used the now centralized newspapers and journals to introduce subtle mentions of the world beyond the walls, snippets of geography, references to foreign nations, hints of technology beyond their comprehension. Nothing drastic. Just enough to test receptiveness. Zachary's excitement dimmed. He let out a heavy sigh. From the reports sent in by the military police, the garrison units, and our own internal informants, the response is mixed at best. Locke wasn't surprised. For more than a century, the people were raised under the false history of the walls. Their minds were deliberately kept small. A society trained to fear change won't accept new ideas quickly. He folded his arms, thoughtful. It will be slow. Very slow. But it's a war we can win. At least there was no active resistance, merely uncertainty. That alone was enough for Locke to count the effort as progress. Zachary tapped the map again, returning to business. Back to the port, he said. The coastline is long. Where should we build? Locke's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the terrain. The draft depth is critical, as well as natural shelter. We can't decide purely from the map, but we can narrow down a region. After that, we can survey it properly. That makes sense, Zachary agreed. But who should lead the expedition? Petra opened her mouth as if to volunteer, but Locke answered before she could speak. I'll take command. The North is unpredictable. I feel better handling it myself. Zachary bowed his head slightly. Thank you. I won't waste your trust. He had expected to be a puppet figurehead when he joined Locke's government. Instead, Locke had strengthened his authority, expanded his responsibilities, and entrusted him with the direction of the island's governance. In his heart, Zachary admired him deeply. And Locke, without dwelling on subtlety or ceremony, simply uncapped a pen, drew a firm circle over a bay-shaped section of the northern coast, and said, We'll start here. I'll take a team to scout it personally. Chapter 212, Elmia District, inside Alan's house. Locke, you finally came back. If you hadn't come back, I'd have thought you were dead out there. The moment he stepped through the door, Uncle Harry's booming voice filled the room. A faint system chime seemed to echo in Locke's head for a beat. Ding, host resists sonic assault, sonic defense +1. He suppressed a smile, shrugged it off, and moved forward to hug Uncle Harry. Can't help it. There's too much to handle at the core, Locke said with an apologetic grin. I've been busy, haven't had much time at home recently. You were back days ago, weren't you? The news I heard said you'd been here already. Uncle Harry insisted, not letting the matter drop. Locke exchanged a look with Aunt Martha and offered a sheepish smile. Brat, you only know how to ask for favors. You were back for days and didn't come see us, Martha scolded good-naturedly. Harry shut up at once. He was the kind of husband who listened when Martha spoke, and Locke felt a rush of relief. He glanced around the warm, cluttered room. Where is everyone? He asked. Grisha left a note and then disappeared, Harry said. Carol's been beside herself. Dina's taking Alan out for a walk to calm him. At the mention of Carol, both Martha and Harry grew serious. Locke's lips tightened. From what he knew of Grisha, it was likely that he had passed the attack Titan's power on to Alan. They discussed the possibility it would be a cruel burden for a 12-year-old. Has anything happened to Alan? Locke asked carefully. Carol and Harry exchanged worried looks. Carol explained, voice small, the day before Grisha left, he found Alan fainted by a farm. A Survey Corps patrol found him and brought him back. He's been in a daze since. He can't remember much. It's tearing Carol apart. Locke closed his eyes for a second, forcing calm into his chest. Alan will be all right. Grisha probably went to help with something at the beach. He should be safe, doctors are needed there. The beach? Alan's eyes widened with excitement. He hurried forward, almost tripping over the rug. Brother Locke, you mean the sea is real? Does the ocean exist? At the word sea, everyone in the room but Dina froze. The idea was foreign to them, the word carried the weight of another world. Locke felt the weight of having to shelter truths. He couldn't tell them everything yet. He softened his voice and put a steady hand on Carol's shoulder. Don't worry. We'll explain things when she's ready. For now, let's keep her calm. After a few coaxing sentences, Carol's breathing eased, the family slowly settled into a fragile peace. Locke helped Aunt Martha finish cooking, and soon the house filled with the clatter and warmth of dinner preparations. Outside the window, dusk slid across the district. Locke watched his hands move through familiar motions, peeling vegetables, stirring a pot, and felt a strange ache for a simpler life. For a moment, images crowded his mind, a room with 2 people, 3 meals a day, for seasons together. He smiled and shook his head. Those were dangerous daydreams. Not now. Petra and Emer, back at the Survey Corps base, both sneezed at the same instant. They exchanged a look, cocky, conspiratorial, and Krista, who sat nearby, glanced up with a tiny smile. All 3 said at once, half teasing, half affectionate, "Locke!" Night fell. When Locke set the last dish on the table, footsteps sounded outside. Carol and the others returned. The disappointment on their faces melted into surprised relief when they saw him. "Locke, you're back," Carol said, voice trembling. "Have you heard anything about Grisha? He vanished after leaving that note. He's been gone more than a week. He left when things calmed down. Why would he risk himself now? You must help us find him." Locke felt the squeeze in his chest. He had more secrets than he could tell. He had to guard some truths. Not everyone was ready for them. He chose his words carefully. Grisha went to help with something at the coast. He thought doctors were needed there. He'll be all right. We'll make sure of that. Carol's expression shifted from panic to a fragile hope. Alan and Mikasa were wide-eyed and restless. Even Martha had tears she brushed away. Dinner passed with a tense calm. After the dishes were cleared, Locke and Dina stepped outside into the yard. The night sky was clear, stars freckling the dark. The crickets chirped, the air smelled faintly of smoke and cooking embers. Dina stood close, the lines on her face softened by the lamplight. "He left a note," she said quietly. "He said he had to do it himself." Locke looked at her, searching. "You think he went alone?" She nodded. "Grisha has always been like that, takes responsibility. He would not tell Carol and only left when he thought it was necessary." Locke folded his hands behind his back, staring at the gate that led to the street beyond. "We'll find him," he said. "And when Alan wakes properly, we'll tell him the truth in a way he can bear." Dina's eyes glistened. A small, grateful smile touched her lips. They stayed standing in the yard a while longer, listening to the quiet of the district, children's shutters closing, distant laughter, the soft, steady breathing of a town that had learned to sleep despite the shadows outside the walls. Locke let the ordinary sound steady him, then turned to go back inside. Inside, Uncle Harry had begun to fidget. He could not be still when family was near. He clapped Locke on the shoulder. "You've been doing well out there, lad. Everyone's talking about you." Locke allowed himself to blush a little at the praise. He had come to accept admiration as another responsibility. Later, when Carol finally retired to bed and the household settled, Locke climbed the stairs to the small room he had been given. He paused at the threshold, listening to the muffled breathing on the other side of the door. For a moment, the weight of command and the lonely edge of leadership pressed in, every plan, every order, every life affected by his decisions. He sat by the window, the night pressing cool against the panes. Somewhere beyond the walls, the sea curled and broke, a sound he could almost remember from other memories. He closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him, if only to remind himself of the world he was fighting to bring his people into. Tomorrow would demand more of him. There were plans to finalize, people to protect, and a fragile peace to keep. He rose from the chair and, before sleep took him, whispered into the quiet. "For the island. For them." A soft breeze moved through the curtains as if in answer. Chapter 213 Northern Gate of Walsina, Morning. "Locke, let us go with you." Aaron's earnest voice cut sharply through the cold morning air. His fists were clenched, face flushed with determination. Behind him, Armin and Mikasa stood as well, Armin's eyes shining with unmistakable hope, Mikasa quiet but firm. If anyone among the 3 carried the purest, deepest yearning for the sea, it was undeniably Armin. His gaze trembled, not with fear, but with a kind of reverence, as though the ocean itself was calling him by name. Locke exhaled slowly. "Does Aunt Carla know you're here?" His tone held zero illusion that the answer might be yes. His eyes shifted to Armin. Uncle Arler definitely doesn't know either, right? At once, both boys faltered, faces stiffening, eyes shifting away. Mikasa simply lowered her gaze, silently confirming everything. Of course, they hadn't gotten permission. If they had, they wouldn't be standing here begging. Locke didn't dislike their desire. On the contrary, he understood it intimately. He had once felt the same suffocating curiosity, the same hunger to push beyond walls. But now, as the commander guiding Parady's rise, he could not indulge them. Not yet. Especially not when the expedition ahead was one of the highest-risk operations since the reclaiming of Shiganshina. They weren't ready. And Eren, most of all, was in no condition to confront truths he wasn't prepared to shoulder. Locke opened his mouth to speak again, but the sound of heavy boots and clanking gear drew near. A squad of soldiers jogged into formation behind the three teenagers. Locke tilted his chin toward them. "I think you should worry about staying alive first." The soldiers saluted sharply, then moved to separate the three would-be stowaways. "Hey! Wait! Brother Locke! Please, just let us see it once." Their protests were firm, but their bodies were no match for trained soldiers. Within moments, they were carried back toward the interior gate, still shouting, still struggling, still burning with the desire to see the sea. Locke didn't watch them being dragged away. Duty demanded a harder heart than that. With the situation settled, Locke gave a short nod. "Begin the march." A wave of motion rippled down the column. Carts loaded with construction materials, surveying equipment, tents, food, and early steam prototypes creaked forward. Engineers and technicians, handpicked by Hang, rode among them. Nearly 500 elite Survey Corps soldiers surrounded the convoy. This expedition was not merely a journey. It was a declaration of Parady Island's future. They would travel from Wall Sina Wall Rose Wall Maria through Titan territory and finally reach the northern coastline, where Parady first deepwater port would be established. And Locke would personally oversee it. As the column moved forward, countless civilians lining the gate whispered among themselves. "That's Commander Locke, isn't it? He's even younger than I heard. He's not even 20, right? The youngest commander the Survey Corps ever had. Age doesn't matter. Since he took command, Titans haven't breached a single wall. He even recaptured Shiganshina. And the papers keep mentioning things from outside the island, ships, nations, oceans. Could those actually be real? If he's going out there again with so many people, maybe something big really is happening. I feel like something unbelievable is coming." Locke listened without turning his head, but the tension in his shoulders eased. The citizens' conversations weren't filled with fear, they were filled with curiosity. Hope. Anticipation. Just months ago, merely suggesting a world beyond the walls was forbidden. The royal government smothered knowledge, arrested questioners, and branded curiosity as blasphemy. Now, after only half a year, the people were discussing the outside world openly, boldly even. It wasn't freedom, not fully. But it was the beginning of a new consciousness. Locke knew that true freedom never existed without boundaries, never existed without power to protect it. So although he encouraged openness, he'd ordered Zachary to maintain strict limits. People may talk freely, but they may not question the legitimacy of the new government. Freedom within order. Order for freedom. It was a delicate balance, but necessary. As they rode through Wall Rose, Locke's thoughts drifted to a man far from these walls. Kenny Ackerman. Before leaving the volunteers, Yelena had reluctantly admitted that Marley's internal anti-government movements were fragmented, disorganized, and often crushed before they could grow. To send someone into Marley. Someone strong enough, cunning enough, ruthless enough. There was only one choice. Erwin could not go, he bore the power of the Card Titan and command of 2 corps. His presence was vital for future coordination. The others, Hang, Pixis, Levi, were either too essential or too ill-suited. But Kenny Ackerman was born for chaos. Born to slice through systems. Born to exploit cracks in empires. He had no Titan power, no political role binding him, no ties that could be used to coerce him. And most importantly, Kenny hungered for a world beyond these walls far more than he hungered for power. "Let me see what's out there, kid." Those were his words when Locke approached him with the plan. Now, somewhere across the sea, Kenny was infiltrating Marley's underbelly, alone but deadly. A single man sent to rot the foundation of a monstrous empire. Locke wondered how far he'd gotten. How much damage he'd already done. Whether he was still alive. A faint smile tugged at Locke's mouth. If anyone can shake Marley from the inside, it's him. The convoy passed Wall Rose, then Wall Maria. The moment they moved beyond Maria's outer gate, the world widened into vast fields and rolling hills. No walls. No stone. Only the open land of Parity stretches endlessly toward the northern sea. From the high vantage of his horse, Locke scanned the distant terrain. Herds of mindless pure Titans wandered across the plains, but none approached. They wouldn't dare. Dina Fritz, transformed, towering, her founding Titan form radiating a pressure that bent the instincts of all pure Titans nearby, strode silently along the convoy's flank. Under her faint but present control, the mindless Titans kept their distance. It wasn't perfect control. Not yet. But for this operation, it was enough. Locke glanced back at the massive line of carts and personnel following him. This expedition will be transformative, he thought. The birth of a port, the first step toward a navy, the beginning of open trade, and the foundation of global strategy. The world outside, ships, artillery, aircraft, was far ahead of Parity. To survive, Parity had to surge forward with unprecedented speed. And this port, this northern harbor, it would become the island's connection to the world. Locke tightened his grip on the reins. No fear. No hesitation. This is where everything changes. He urged his horse forward, and the convoy continued its march toward destiny. Chapter 214. Outside the northern gate of Wall Maria, the wind carried the faint smell of pine and distant soil. The massive convoy, hundreds of soldiers, engineers, wagons of steel and timber, waited silently. Locke had stepped aside to check the formation when he noticed Dina Fritz lingering behind him with an uneasy expression. Her brows were drawn tight, her fingers restlessly twisting the cuff of her sleeve, as if gathering courage she wasn't sure she had. Locke turned toward her. "What is it?" His voice was calm, not warm, not cold, simply waiting. Dina hesitated for only a second before speaking. "Locke, are you certain it's wise for us to travel so openly?" Locke blinked. "Why do you ask that?" Her eyes drifted toward the engineers preparing the wagons, the soldiers adjusting their vertical maneuver gear, all moving as if this expedition were certain and safe. She lowered her voice. "Those people who came from Marley, the volunteers." Her voice tightened. "I don't believe they're completely trustworthy." Locke studied her carefully. "They were brought by Zeke. Why would you doubt them?" At the mention of her son, Dina's shoulders stiffened. A flicker of guilt, regret, crossed her face. When she lifted her eyes again, she found Locke's expression unchanged, steady, unreadable. That hurt her far more than if he had shown anger. She forced a thin smile, but her voice trembled. "I know. You still resent me because of Zeke." Locke remained silent. Dina pressed on, a quiet desperation in her eyes. "But you must understand, back then, I was a mother. Any mother would have protected her child." Still, she exhaled shakily. "Our goals remain the same. We both want to free the Eldian people. We both want to end Marley's tyranny. On that, Locke, we stand on the same side." Locke did not flinch. "What are you trying to say?" For a moment, Dina looked as though she might crumble. Since Grisha's disappearance, the world around her had changed faster than she could grasp. She was no longer the princess of the old restorationists, no longer the central pillar of their ideology. Here, in this rising Parity, she was simply another wielder of Titan power, one whose usefulness Locke measured with cold precision. The truth was bitter, but undeniable. Her life, her safety, her future, none of it was truly in her own hands. She took a breath. I think, the way we interact now is wrong. Locke's eyes narrowed slightly. Dina continued, voice low but steady. I can feel the distance between us. And I know why. Since Grisha left us, the only bond tying us together has weakened. Without him, we're nothing but two people using each other for a common goal. Finally, Locke spoke. There is no problem between us. You follow my orders. Beyond that, I do not interfere in your life. Unless your actions threaten our plans or endanger yourself, you are free. The words were delivered plainly, but they landed like ice. He wasn't being cruel, only honest. Dina swallowed. Locke went on, expression unchanging. You are not my subordinate, and I don't treat you like one. We help each other when our goals match. If one day they don't. He didn't need to finish. Dina already knew. She asked anyway. She needed to hear it from his mouth. Locke, if our goals diverge one day, how would you deal with me? He looked her directly in the eyes. No hesitation. Just truth. I would kill you. Dina flinched. Not from fear, but from the brutal clarity of it. Locke continued, tone steady as stone. If anyone stands in the way of Parady's survival, anyone, then I will not spare them. You included. Dina let out a small, bitter laugh. So direct. But she wasn't angry. In a way, she respected him more for the honesty. Then her face softened with sorrow as she spoke again. Locke. I have a request. He didn't blink. It's about Zeke. Dina nodded. He is my son, and Grisha's. Whatever he has done, I ask that you spare his life. Locke folded his arms. Even if I don't kill him, he is still a Titan shifter. He has 13 years. He has already used 7. 6 remain. Dina held his gaze without wavering. Locke exhaled and nodded. Grisha helped me more than I can ever repay. Because of that, I will not kill Zeke, so long as neither of you interferes with my plans. Dina bowed her head. I swear it. I give you my word. Locke extended his hand toward the open wilderness beyond Wall Maria. Good. Once we leave the wall, I need you to control the surrounding pure Titans. Keep them away from the convoy. Our engineers and soldiers must remain safe. Her answer was immediate. I understand. I'll ensure none of the Titans approach us. Dina's partial command of the founding Titan's power was imperfect, but enough to push pure Titans away in a wide radius. Not enough to give them detailed orders, but enough to carve a path. A safe road through Titan territory. That road would become the artery connecting the interior to the northern coast, allowing construction crews, supplies, and soldiers to travel freely. When the northern port rose from the ground, Parady Island would finally be able to open navigation routes, develop a fleet, receive foreign support, and prepare for the inevitable conflict with Marley. A long war. A heavy war. A war that demanded absolute focus. Parady was still too far behind the world's industrial powers. If they hesitated, if they weakened, if they misjudged, they would be devoured. Locke knew this keenly. Every decision he made now would determine whether Eldians would rise, or be erased. At last, Dina lifted her head again. She watched Locke as he turned toward the front of the convoy, where soldiers waited for orders. Her voice drifted softly behind him, so soft it was almost carried away by the wind. Grisha believed in you. I hope he wasn't wrong. Locke didn't turn. He wasn't. Chapter 215. The northern gate of Wall Maria rose behind them like a final guardian, its shadow stretching across the packed earth. Under the nearly full attention of the residents who had flocked to the battlements and roadways, Locke's convoy pushed forward, wheels rumbling, hooves pounding, banners snapping in the morning wind. Today, They were leaving the protection of the walls and stepping into the wild expanse where mindless titans still roamed, the place every civilian feared, yet where the future of parity now pointed. A subtle tension hung in the convoy. Even the engineers and craftsmen, handpicked, sharp-minded, but inexperienced outside the walls, couldn't keep their hands from tightening on the cart rails. But the shift in atmosphere after crossing the threshold was unexpected. The moment the last wagon left the cool shadow of the wall, the soldiers of the Survey Corps moved smoothly into formation. 2 long columns stretched forward and backward, sealing the convoy inside a protective funnel. Every soldier wore the newest reinforced 3D maneuver gear, twin black-gold bamboo blades, portable sidearms, spare gas tanks, and even thunder spears for emergencies. They were the most elite fighters inside the walls, loyal, disciplined, unflinching. Their mere presence strengthened the spines of everyone present. Within minutes, the unease inside the convoy softened into awe. Soon, barely 5 kilometers from Wall Maria, the convoy encountered its first cluster of pure titans. Gasps surged among the engineers, some reached instinctively for tools they could not use as weapons, but something strange happened. Before the soldiers even raised a single blade, the titans stopped. Then, like frightened animals, the titans spun around and bolted in the opposite direction. Massive forms crashed through trees, kicking up dust, all scrambling to escape the path of the convoy. Within moments, the threats vanished. Silence flooded the roadway. What just happened? Titans running away. I've never seen it. Is it fear? Titans don't feel fear. No, look, think about who's riding at the front. You mean Captain Locke? And that woman near him. Didn't you see? Her gesture, right when the Titans fled. Incredible. Whatever it is, I'm grateful. If all Titans behave like this, the road ahead might actually be safe. Let's not jinx it. The craftsmen murmured too, confusion mixing with relief. Many had faced Titans only from observation towers or during emergency evacuations. To witness them flee, without a single blade drawn, upended everything they believed. More than one person began wondering if Titans were truly as unstoppable or terrifying as they'd been taught. What fueled that confidence the most was Locke himself. At the very front, he hadn't tensed, hadn't even so much as touched his weapons. He simply watched the retreating Titans with a calm expression, as though he'd expected it. For those following behind, that composure was contagious. A commander who did not fear Titans made his men believe they didn't need to fear either. Locke lifted his gaze to the shrinking silhouettes in the distance. Then he turned slightly, looking back at Dina Fritz, walking a few steps behind him, her eyes lowered in concentration. Will they come back this way? Locke asked. I cannot be certain, Dina answered. But in the short term, no. The influence I place on their instincts is strong. Unless they encounter an obstacle they cannot bypass, they will continue moving far from us until I direct otherwise. Her tone was soft but confident. She wasn't hiding anything, at least not now. After their private conversation earlier, Dina clearly understood where she stood and what was expected of her. There was no longer a veil of arrogance around her, no lingering claim to royal privilege. Her attitude had shifted into something sharp, alert, and pragmatic. She knew very well. If she wished to see Eldians liberated. If she wished for Zeke to survive. If she wished to live long enough to witness victory. Then Locke was the one person she could not afford to alienate. Locke gave a short nod. That's enough. As long as Marley continues to refrain from releasing new Titans into parity, all we need is to drive away the ones that remain in the northern region. Once the route stays clear, we'll have a safe path from Wall Maria to the coastline. Dina clasped her hands behind her back. Once the safe route is established, the road will open not just for the convoy, but for future construction teams. The area around the plant port will grow rapidly, more people, more activity, more trade. When the port becomes fully operational, the people of Parity will witness with their own eyes how narrow their old understanding of the world was. Locke smiled faintly. and their acceptance of new ideas will grow naturally. That's when real change will spread through the island. Her eyes shone. Exactly. The people who travel with us now, when they return, they will become living witnesses. They will speak of the sea, of the land beyond, of the truth outside the walls. Their words will travel from village to village, district to district. Curiosity will spread. With you as the one who opened the path. Dina's voice softened, almost reverent. Your prestige will rise beyond anything parody has ever known. You will become the symbol of the new era, the belief people cling to. Locke's expression remained unreadable. Dina Fritz was revealing more of her character with each passing hour. Not just a Titan shifter. Not just a former restorationist. But a woman with political instincts. A woman who understood strategy, influence, and narrative. A woman who could imagine the future and describe it in frighteningly persuasive terms. Locke narrowed his eyes slightly, not hostile, but evaluating. Perhaps he had underestimated her. Yet that did not mean he trusted her. Far from it. The convoy continued forward, the road widening as they entered the northern expanse, land untouched for generations, where grass swayed in the wind and the world stretched infinitely ahead. Every kilometer they traveled was a step toward the first port in the history of Parody Island. And every movement of the Titans clearing away from their path demonstrated the frightening potential of the founding Titan, even when wielded imperfectly. This journey would shape the future. For Parody. For the world. For Locke. And Dina Fritz, whether ally, tool, or future adversary, was proving capable of far more than he once believed. Chapter 216, with Dina Fritz repeatedly exercising the founding Titan's abilities along the march, her control grew noticeably steadier. As a result, Locke's entire convoy advanced far faster than expected. In just 8 days, they reached the northern coastline, an expanse none of them had ever imagined. The moment the sea came into view, a wave of awe rippled through the soldiers and technicians alike. That can't be real, right? It's enormous. It doesn't even end. Is this really all water? Idiot, the commander already told us. This isn't a river. This is the sea, an ocean bigger than every district on Eldia put together. I thought he was exaggerating, but after seeing this, I believe it now. I wonder what people from other nations look like. Do they have the same number of arms and legs? Maybe they have more. Shut up before someone thinks you're serious. Fair enough. Their excitement almost drowned out the waves. Locke didn't join the chatter. Standing beside a massive rock at the shoreline, he gazed out at the meeting point of sea and sky, letting the salty wind brush past him. The sheer scale of it, untamed, endless, sparked something fierce and ambitious inside him. One day, this sea will be under our command too. His goals were no longer simply about freeing Eldians. Somewhere along the way, his vision had shifted, expanded. Power had a taste, and it was intoxicating. He knew it, acknowledged it, and refused to let it cloud his judgment. If anything, it only sharpened his awareness. To protect what he had built, he must remain strong. To stay strong, he must remain above all others. Let's establish the port as soon as possible, Locke murmured to himself. Once navigation routes opened and foreign contact began, Parody would transform anything the walls had ever seen. He turned from the view, only to find Dina Fritz approaching him. You don't look very surprised, she said, narrowing her eyes slightly. It's just the ocean, Locke replied. And I've seen it before. You're not telling the truth. Her voice was soft, almost teasing, but she didn't push further. Instead, her expression grew serious. Even so. Have you thought through what comes next? Marley's patrol ships occasionally pass this area. If we build a seaport here, it will be discovered sooner or later. It's our own coastline. We'll build what we want, Locke said coldly. If Marley decides to attack, we will not bow. And if it comes to that, the rest is your responsibility. My responsibility? Dina blinked. You mean, you expect me to act? Locke's gaze shifted to her, calm, unreadable, but carrying a pressure she couldn't ignore. What's wrong? He asked lightly. Don't tell me you're bound by the non-war vow as well. Her breath caught. She knew that if she hesitated here, just for a heartbeat, Locke would consider her unreliable and remove her without hesitation. The last few months had shown her exactly what kind of leader he was, ruthless when needed, unyielding in principle, and always willing to act first if a threat appeared. I'm not that fragile, she said quickly. If Marley attacks, I won't stand aside. Good. Locke turned back to the sea. With the current level of Marley's naval weapons, if we can command enough pure Titans, we should sink their ships easily. Once your coordination improves, I want Titan stationed beneath the waterline. Hidden. Waiting. Dina's eyes lit with sudden realization. A submerged Titan barrier. Turning their sea advantage into a trap. That's ingenious. Locke simply nodded. Let's head back. Stay in the wind too long, and you'll catch a cold. She followed silently. Once the convoy was fully assembled at the seaside base, the shock and excitement spread even faster. Many had only heard vague mentions of lands outside the walls, and none had seen the ocean. The reality was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying, and humbling. Locke didn't restrict their reactions. In fact, he encouraged them. He ordered that all personnel not on duty be given a half-day break to freely explore the coastline. What happened next was chaotic in the most predictable way. Some tasted seawater and spat it out immediately. Some wandered too close to the waves and were knocked flat. A few saw small marine life and fled in panic, thinking they were miniature titans. Others stood mesmerized by seashells as if they were ancient artifacts. Locke sat atop the roof of the temporary command building, watching the commotion below with a faint smile. How nice, he muttered. They don't have to think about anything. No decisions. No burdens. Just follow orders and enjoy the world they never knew existed. Dina, standing beside him, almost opened her mouth to retort, but swallowed the words. Locke's tone wasn't mocking. If anything, there was a rare note of envy hidden within it. Below them, the gathered soldiers and researchers marveled endlessly. These people, Dina murmured, eyes softening. When they bring this experience back inside the walls, everything will change. The people's worldview will shatter and rebuild. Curiosity will spread. Old ideas will crumble. She paused, then added with quiet conviction. This will be the beginning of Parady's true awakening. Locke didn't reply immediately. Instead, he observed the horizon, the sea breeze tugging at his coat, the rhythmic crash of waves echoing the pulse of a world far larger than the one behind the walls. Dina continued, unaware of his silence. When they tell others what they saw, your influence will grow even further. You'll become more than just a commander, you'll become the symbol of a new era. A leader who opened the world for them. Locke finally looked at her, this time with a glint of something new. He had underestimated her. Dina Fritz wasn't simply a vessel for the founding Titan. Her insight, her political instincts, her ability to understand the flow of human hearts, all of it was sharper than he'd expected. Interesting. Perhaps she was more dangerous, and more valuable, than he initially believed. Meanwhile, along the shoreline, the laughter and shouts of newly awakened minds mingled with the sound of the tide, marking the first true step toward a future where Parody Island would no longer live in a cage. The sea had opened their eyes. Now Locke intended to use that opening to reshape the island, and the world. Chapter 217. The scouting teams Locke had dispatched returned before long. The bay marked on the century-old map, once sealed away in Rod Rice's private chamber, had finally been located. Without wasting a moment, Locke ordered the convoy to march through the night toward the coastline. Along the way, Dina Fritz cleared out more than a dozen wandering pure Titans, sweeping the path clean. At first, the soldiers remained tense every time a Titan appeared on the horizon. But now, after days of traveling with Dina's support, their reactions had changed completely. Look! Titan! Oh! There it goes, It's running. This was the new normal. Whenever a Titan approached within Dina's influence, it instinctively fled in the opposite direction. Encounters that once filled them with terror were now little more than passing moments. Only twice did a Titan reappear after being driven off, both times because its escape route was blocked by cliffs or massive fallen trees, forcing it to circle until the convoy crossed paths with it again. Under this protective umbrella, the convoy reached the bay without a single casualty. The pure Titans nearby were dispersed quickly, and work began immediately. Soldiers erected a temporary station overnight using both transported supplies and the abundant natural materials around them. Since it was only a provisional outpost, the structures were simple, reinforced sheds, watchtowers, supply storage, and a command tent. Even so, by dawn, the area was already a functioning base. The bay itself was impressive, a sweeping crescent sheltered by 10-meter cliffs, naturally shielded from harsh winds. The water deepened steadily farther out, easily suitable for docks large enough to hold multiple ships at once. This, Locke thought, could one day become the heart of Parady's maritime power. The next morning, after inspecting the coastline in detail, Locke felt satisfied with the location. Yet the reality was undeniable. The craftsmen he had brought knew only how to build river harbors. Ocean ports were another matter entirely. Their training was limited, their knowledge incomplete. Locke knew patience was necessary. The first true port of Parady Island cannot be crewed. Not when its future may determine the fate of the entire island. The island alone can't build this, Locke finally admitted to himself. We'll need Irina's support, and the sooner the better. He immediately ordered the engineers to begin drafting layout concepts while he personally reviewed their work, sketching additions from memory, design principles and structures he recalled from the modern world he once knew. Many of his proposals stunned the craftsmen, who whispered among themselves in amazement. Even Dina Fritz, who had been observing quietly, found her expression growing increasingly complex. She had believed she understood Locke's strengths and weaknesses. She now realized she had drastically underestimated his capabilities. Not only did he possess overwhelming leadership and combat ability, but he also exhibited an unexpected mastery of planning and design, knowledge the island itself had no way to teach. Just what kind of person is he? Dina wondered. Meanwhile, far to the south, Irina and her group had already been escorted by Irwin back to Marley's patrol vessel. Their mission finished, the warship turned its bow toward Marley's mainland military harbor. "Stay close," Irina whispered sharply as they disembarked. "Don't look around too much. Don't ask questions. If the Marleyan soldiers even sense something strange about you, we're both finished." Kenny Ackerman, now wearing a Marleyan soldier's uniform and carrying no weapons, grinned with an ease that didn't match the tension around them. "Relax. I'm not stupid enough to die here." His usual swagger had dimmed, replaced by a seriousness born from stepping into unfamiliar territory. As they passed checkpoint after checkpoint, Kenny observed quietly, storing every detail away. Once beyond the heavily guarded port gates, Marley's capital greeted them with its full splendor. Kenny's eyes widened despite himself. Strange metal carriages raced along stone roads without horses. Stalls sold food he had never seen. Buildings towered higher than any within the walls. Clothing came in colors and designs foreign to Parady. The staggering difference between the two worlds struck him harder with every step. "So these are the things Locke's been pushing for," Kenny murmured internally. "They're real." He wasn't exaggerating. But how the hell did he know all this without ever leaving the island? The question hung unanswered in his mind. Irina watched him carefully. Once satisfied he wasn't losing control, she let out a subtle breath of relief. If Locke trusted him enough to send him as a covert operative, she would trust that decision as well. Wordlessly, they slipped through the bustling streets and into a narrow alleyway. At its end sat an inconspicuous bar with a faded sign. "Our contact is inside," Irina said softly. "Stay sharp." Kenny nodded and followed her through the door. His mind shifted instantly from curiosity to absolute focus. He was here for one reason. To infiltrate Marley. To find and unite anti-Marley elements. To gather intelligence and prepare the ground for Parady's future war. Know yourself and your enemy. Only then can you win. Locke had said it plainly, he would not fight a battle blind. For Kenny Ackerman, this new mission meant something else as well. It meant freedom. A world beyond the walls. A chance at something far greater than the stagnant life he had left behind. He felt the thrill of it, raw, fierce, intoxicating. This, he thought as he entered the dimly lit bar, is where things finally get interesting. Chapter 218, Locke's return journey from the northern coastline began at dawn, the first light brushing across the repaired surface of Wall Maria. Behind him, the temporary harbor still buzzed with activity, soldiers, engineers, and laborers working under Dina Fritz's supervision as they built the first true outpost of Parady Island's future. Leaving her there had been a calculated decision. It was not only a test of Dina but a responsibility she had to shoulder. As the holder of the founding Titan's incomplete power, she alone could keep the surrounding pure Titans at bay and ensure that construction continued without interruption. Her performance over the previous week proved that she understood this. The soldiers already spoke of her with a strange mixture of awe and respect. But Locke had other obligations that required his immediate attention, plans that, if successful, would reshape the island's destiny. Traveling alone, he moved faster than the convoy ever could. His blade harness rested lightly against his back, and the crisp northern air stung pleasantly against his cheeks. From the top of a hill, he could see steam rising in the distance, Titan steam. TCH, another pack. A cluster of over a dozen pure Titans wandered across the open plain, drawn by the faint trail he had left. Locke shifted the handle of his gear, preparing to fight if necessary. But then Dina's lingering influence took effect. Instead of approaching, the Titans paused, turned clumsily, and lumbered away in the opposite direction, scattering like startled deer. Locke watched them disappear with a quiet exhale. Good. The path might truly become safe. He continued southward at a steady pace. By the time he reached the outskirts of Wall Maria, the sun hung low, painting the sky orange. Soldiers stationed on the battlements spotted him immediately through their scopes. Notify the gate. Captain Locke has returned. The garrison soldiers outside the outer gate redirected several approaching Titans as Locke approached, guiding them away using signal flares and horses. Once the path was clear, the massive gate creaked open. Inside, the people who had gathered along the street, expecting a convoy, blinked in surprise when only a single horse galloped in. Only Captain Locke. Did something happen outside the wall? No, look at him, he doesn't look injured. But where's the rest of the expedition? Locke pulled sharply on the reins, his horse halting at the center of the street. The murmurs died instantly. Every eye in the district seemed fixed on him, and Locke knew opportunity when he saw it. If Parady Island were to change, the hearts of the people must change first. He raised his voice. Citizens of Parady Island, hear me clearly. The echoes of his words bounced off the stone walls. This expedition has reached the northernmost edge of our land. And beyond it, the ocean exists exactly as the stories say, vast, endless, and real. Silence. Locke continued, voice firm and confident. And beyond that ocean, exist other lands. Other nations. Other humans. We are not alone in this world. Nor have we ever been. The crowd erupted. To think, the world outside the walls. There are others like us? Impossible, no, Captain Locke wouldn't lie. Locke gave them a steady nod. The world is larger than you imagine. And next time an expedition departs, those of you with courage may join us. See it with your own eyes. Then, without lingering for praise or questions, Locke urged his horse forward and began riding toward the interior. The street was left buzzing with shock and excitement. Over the next 3 days, Locke passed through district after district, traveling back toward the Survey Corps headquarters. And everywhere he went, he repeated the same message. The ocean exists. Humans exist beyond the island. The world is vast. Parody Island will no longer remain in the dark. By the time Locke reached the inner walls, the rumor had spread like wildfire. The once isolated citizens were now envisioning a world greater than they ever believed possible. For the first time, their curiosity outweighed their fear. This was the ideological shift Locke had been counting on. When he finally reached the Survey Corps base, fatigue tugged at him, but he pushed through it. The office door opened just as Petra and Emer were finishing a stack of reports. They both froze. Petra's eyes softened instantly. "You're back." Emer crossed her arms, trying, and failing, to look indifferent. "TCH, took you long enough." Not like I was worried or anything. But her gaze remained glued to him. Two guards at the door noticed the atmosphere and quietly closed it behind them. Petra approached first, examining him the way she always did after a long mission, checking for wounds, exhaustion, or even the smallest hint of discomfort. When she confirmed he was physically unharmed, her shoulders relaxed. "I'm glad you're safe. We knew the expedition was important, but..." Her voice wavered slightly. "We worry too." Locke smiled faintly. "You both worked hard while I was away. Next time, you'll come with me." Emer's mask shattered. "Wait, really?" Her excitement filled the room, but Petra hesitated, brows knitting. "Locke, there's so much to handle here in headquarters. Are you sure we should just leave?" "It's fine," he replied calmly. "Because the headquarters will be relocating to the coast." The two women stiffened in shock. "What?" Petra exclaimed. Emer blinked. "We're moving the entire Corps headquarters to the shore?" Locke simply nodded. But before either woman could question further, Locke realized someone was missing. "Where's Historia?" he asked. Both Petra and Emer stiffened again, not from surprise this time, but from unease. Petra exchanged a glance with Emer before answering. "Locke, something happened." The tone of her voice made Locke's chest tighten. He stepped closer, scanning their expressions. Petra lowered her eyes. "Historia's been acting strangely ever since you left. She disappeared from the base this morning." Emer added through clenched teeth. "She left a note. Said she needed time to think." Locke fell silent. Historia rarely acted impulsively. If she left without informing him, then something had deeply shaken her. The next phase of Parody Island's transformation was underway, but now, another issue demanded Locke's attention. And he could already sense this was not something that would resolve easily. Chapter 219, The descent into the underground detention sector beneath Walsena was long and quiet. Locke passed through checkpoint after checkpoint, nodding to the military police soldiers who saluted him with unwavering respect. His boots echoed along the dim stone corridors, lantern light flickering against walls that had once imprisoned countless political dissidents under the old monarchy. Finally, after the sixth iron gate opened, Locke stepped into the final chamber. This was where Rod Rice, the former true king of the walls, lived out the remainder of his life. Despite being labeled a prison, the chamber resembled a miniature palace. Nearly 1,000 square meters of polished stone flooring, ornate furnishings, embroidered rugs, and expensive oil lamps made the space resemble a noble's residence far more than a cell. Locke exhaled through his nose. "Zachary's sense of justice is creative," he muttered. It was crueler than chains. No torture. No beatings. No interrogations. Just silence, days, weeks, months of suffocating silence, with no books, no voice, no sky. An elegant cage designed to let the mind rot in isolation. Locke admitted privately that even he might not last long in such emptiness. Rod Rice lifted his head the moment Locke appeared. He had been speaking with Historia, quietly and earnestly, until the sound of footsteps pulled both their gazes toward the entrance. "Locke!" Rod stumbled toward the bars, desperation etched across his tired face. Please listen to me. I have nothing left. I swear, I won't resist you. Just let me out. I'll stay out of the government, out of public life, out of everything. I won't hinder you. Locke walked past him without even acknowledging his existence. He stopped beside Historia, who looked startled at his sudden appearance. I'm here to take you back, Locke said gently. Let's go. Historia cast one last look toward her father. Regret and sorrow mixed in her eyes, emotions Locke had expected. She was kind down to her bones, almost painfully so. If she truly despised Rod, she would not have risked suspicion by visiting him at all. They turned to leave, but Rod's voice cracked behind them. Historia. At least, say something to me. She hesitated but said nothing, her hand tightening around her cloak. Locke glanced back at the former monarch once, his expression cold and unreadable. Rod froze. He understood instantly. Compared to loneliness, he feared death far more. Locke didn't have to threaten him, the possibility hung in the air with chilling certainty. Rod had been king long enough to read people. He knew Locke now held all real power in the walls. If Locke wanted him erased, President Zachary would obey without question. Rod's jaw trembled, and he sank back, unable to speak another word. Locke didn't spare him a second glance. He guided Historia up the long staircase toward the surface, letting fresh air and sunlight gradually wash the underground chill from her cheeks. Only when they reached the courtyard outside did he ask quietly, "Do you want him released?" Historia's lips pressed together. "I thought about it. But—" She shook her head and answered with newfound resolve. "No. It's safer for him to stay there. The walls are too unstable. If he were released now, it would cause trouble, for him and for everyone else. But, may I still visit him sometimes?" Locke nodded. "You may. Just don't let it interfere with your responsibilities. Petra, Emer, and you're all people I trust, and all three of you will hold major responsibilities as Parity moves into a new era. Don't let me down." Historia inhaled deeply, straightened her posture, and answered with conviction. "I won't. I promise." During the coming months, she would witness every change in the walls, political, social, military. Under Locke's leadership, Parity Island had transformed from a stagnant kingdom into a nation awakening to its future. She had seen firsthand the unity among the core, the advancement of technology, the rebuilding of cities, and the new freedoms granted to the people. Her father's rule had never offered any of that. He preserved the walls, yes, but he never tried to strengthen them. He never tried to advance the nation. Never tried to protect its future. Locke had done all of it within a single year. No wonder the people adored him. A weight settled on Historia's shoulders. Guilt, mixed with admiration. But when Locke reached out to rest his hand on her head, she startled slightly, then relaxed under the gentle gesture. "Don't think too hard," he said softly. "None of this is your fault." Her cheeks flushed pink. "Thank you, Captain." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but warm. They might have remained there longer, but a soldier sprinted across the courtyard. "Captain Locke. Commander Irwin and President Zachary are awaiting your presence in the council office." Locke nodded. "I'm coming." He turned toward Historia again. "Help Petra and Emer until I return. There's much to prepare. We'll be leaving soon." "Leaving," she echoed. "Yes. There won't be Titan attacks near the walls anymore. Our attention will shift to the northern coastline. And since the core headquarters will eventually relocate there, so will all of you." Historia blinked, stunned. But then she smiled shyly. "Then I'll follow you, Captain." Locke gave her a small nod, then strode toward the upper levels of the government building. Behind him, Historia touched the place on her head where he had patted her, her cheeks still warm, before hurrying toward Petra and Emer. Locke, meanwhile, prepared for the next stage. The walls were awakening. The future was coming fast. And there was no turning back now. Chapter 220, inside the commander's office, the lamplight burned low, and shadows stretched long across the walls. Locke stood across from Zachary and Erwin, hands clasped behind his back, his expression steady. "Locke, you've stirred up a storm this time," Zachary began, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. There was a flicker of excitement in his eyes, half anxiety, half admiration. "Are you prepared to confront the public head-on? Isn't this a little early?" Erwin added, though his tone was thoughtful rather than opposing. Locke shook his head. "We don't have the luxury of time. The outside world won't wait for us. Development must accelerate. I'm taking a group of volunteers outside the walls and relocating them to the northern bay. We'll reclaim land, build, and open a fixed route. It has to be done." Neither Zachary nor Erwin spoke. They watched him, listening. Locke continued, his voice firm. "And I intend to transfer the headquarters of the Survey Corps to the bay. That coastline will become the first point of conflict with Marley. If we're going to be attacked, it will be there. Not here." The logic was simple, undeniable. Inside the center of parity, there would be peace for some time. The real threat would come from the sea. Of the 9 Titans, only the power of the Warhammer remained under Marley's absolute control. The Beast Titan was already an internal ally. And Marley's armies were still tied down by the war against the Mideast Alliance. They could not afford to withdraw large forces to deal with parity. That bought time, but not much. The northern seaport would become the bridgehead, and it had to be fortified. Erwin and Zachary exchanged a meaningful glance. They understood. Locke moved to the window. Twilight had deepened, indigo washing across the sky. He gazed outward as though he could see beyond the horizon. "We develop first," he murmured, "then we take the offensive. Being forced to defend is not my style." The laboratory had already begun changing everything. With Yelena's arrival and the technical expertise she brought, Hang had solved puzzles she'd wrestled with for months. Steam engine research was advancing at an astonishing speed. Parity was on the verge of entering a new age. Comfort within the walls would end. People would spill outward. The North would become a frontier, and then a home. Locke had no intention of stopping that momentum. "As long as the government pushes in the right direction," he said, "people will go north. They'll farm, graze livestock, and build towns. They'll see results, and others will follow." And the North was rich. Coal, minerals, stone, all the resources the island needed were waiting. When steam arrived, electricity would follow. Coal would become a strategic resource. Locke had already begun organizing exploration teams, and once Titan activity was under control, civilian groups would follow. In time, the North would be full of life. The island would expand. Prosperity would move outward like wildfire. Parity would change. Locke could already picture it. Zachary finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Your plan is audacious," he said with a slow exhale. "But necessary. I support it." "I agree," Erwin added immediately. Locke nodded. "Then I'll trouble you both with the internal work. Publish accounts of what we've seen outside. Encourage people to open their eyes to the world. And as for the truth about Titans, release enough to shape understanding. But not everything at once. You know how to handle it." Zachary's eyes flashed. He understood perfectly. The old royal order had left stains, fear, ignorance, death. The truth of that was a political tool now. Not for cruelty, but for progress. If presented carefully, the public would accept it, and the influence of the old lineage would fade. Zachary was an expert in this sort of work. Locke trusted him. He knew the man's cunning and skill far exceeded his own in matters of politics. Erwin changed the subject with clear enthusiasm. "In 3 days, I'll head for the southern coast again," he said. "Yelena has already sent word. Their researchers and technicians will come with me. They'll provide support in our laboratories, on port construction, and in equipment development." Compared to the outside world, parity was primitive. It had relied too long on Titans as its only strength. But now, With international expertise added to the island's own focused effort, everything would shift. A centralized government with no internal resistance meant progress could be fast. Very fast. This was the era Erwin had hoped for. Locke did not let the excitement take him. His voice remained calm. External support matters. But we must strengthen ourselves. Education needs to expand. Rewrite textbooks. Shape a new generation. We need successors, people who can take over when we fall. Agreed, Zachary said. Absolutely, Erwin echoed. Both men looked at Locke, still so young, but far ahead of them in vision. For a moment, neither spoke. He stood at the window, posture relaxed but eyes sharp, carrying the weight of a nation without flinching. In that quiet moment, the two older men understood something. Locke was no longer a promising youth. He was the one leading parity forward. And they had chosen well. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 12. Peace.